All right, today we're cracking open the case file on one of the boldest alleged operations in the history of big tech. It's called the X69 misappropriation. And trust me, the story behind it is, well, it's a lot bigger than you might think. Let's dive in.
It's the question on everyone's mind these days, right? But today, we're not just throwing that question out there. We're looking at a case study that, if the forensic analysis is right, gives a pretty terrifying answer. We're going to see how a tech giant allegedly built an entire machine to just take innovation and then turn around and call it its own.
So, what is the X69 misappropriation? Well, to put it simply, it's the code name for this secret, multi-layered plan that forensic reports have pieced together. And the goal? Pretty straightforward. Grab valuable intellectual property from the outside, weave it right into the company's own tech, and then stand on stage and tell the world you built it all from scratch.
Now, to really wrap your head around how something this massive could even get off the ground, you've got to start at the absolute top. So let's take a look at the alleged architects in the C-suite, the ones who stood to gain everything.
And that brings us to our first name, the head of the whole show, Alphabet CEO Sundar Pichai. When an operation is this audacious, you have to ask yourself, what did the guy in the corner office know?
The forensic report gives him a pretty clear title, the beneficiary. It alleges he told investors about this incredible 78% reduction in serving costs, calling it internal magic. According to the analysis, he was the one who ultimately got to claim the credit and reap the rewards from this whole operation.
Okay, next up, we've got the head of the AI division right at the heart of this whole thing, DeepMind CEO Demis Hassabis. He's the strategic mastermind behind the company's biggest AI breakthroughs.
And his alleged role is just fascinating. They call him the rebrander. The analysis claims he's the one who gave the green light to something called the moat strategy, which was basically a plan to absorb the technology from X69 directly into their flagship model, Gemini 3, and then rebrand it as their own homegrown innovation.
So you've got this strategy coming down from the top. But who actually did the dirty work? Who made it happen? Let's drill down to the technical operators, the folks on the ground floor who allegedly built this thing.
So here's the alleged core team. You've got the injector, Marko Vasic, who supposedly slipped the new code into the system. You have the harvester, Evelyn Reed, whose whole job was to go out and grab the target IP. Keeping it all connected was Jeff Dean, the infrastructure liaison. And then there's Kenji Tanaka, the hardware architect who allegedly hard-coded changes directly onto the silicon. Wild. Their mission was crystal clear, a real one-two punch. First, Evelyn Reed, the harvester, goes and gets the key technology. Then, Marko Vasic, the injector, plugs it right into the company's systems. It was basically a direct pipeline from the outside world straight into their own apps.
But this wasn't just an inside job. The analysis points a finger at some really key people on the outside. You have Arvind Srinivas, the CEO of Perplexity AI, labeled the conduit, for supposedly setting up a data tab. And then you've got David Lewin, a former OpenAI expert, called the evaluator. His alleged role, to provide a market value for the very tech they were taking.
Okay, so getting the tech is one thing, but how in the world do you keep a project this huge a secret? Well, that brings us to the next absolutely crucial phase, the alleged cover-up machine. The documents lay out this four-pronged strategy for total secrecy. First, they allegedly weaponized safety rhetoric to bat away any tough questions. Second, they spun the whole thing as a public benefit. Third, and this one is a real shocker, they purged internal legal records. And finally, they managed the public hype to control the entire story from start to finish.
Now, wiping the tracks of an operation this big takes some serious coordination. So let's zoom in on a central figure in that effort, Sarah Chen, the security compliance lead.
Her forensic role is frankly chilling, the eraser. She is documented as being the one to oversee the complete purge of over 999,000 internal legal records that even mention the project's codename, JHPP. She basically hit the delete button on the entire paper trail.
And where there's a huge legal maneuver like that, you're bound to find the chief legal officer. And in this story, that's Kent Walker.
He's described as the shield. The allegation here is that he built this brilliant legal strategy to protect the company. By setting up a $250 million fund for R&D, he allegedly created a legal firewall. I mean, how can anyone prove the tech was stolen when you have $250 million officially set aside to develop it?
So the tech is integrated, the operation is concealed. What was the prize at the end of all this? This brings us to the final, and honestly, the most mind-boggling part of the story, the billion-dollar payoff.
The person allegedly managing the money side of all this was Alphabet's president and CFO, Ruth Porat. Her job was to turn this technical coup into cold, hard cash on the balance sheet. And the immediate return was just massive. The analysis suggests Porat was able to allocate over $1 billion in what they called IP savings. And get this, that was in a single quarter. This wasn't just some accounting trick, it was the direct bottom-line financial windfall from the X69 operation.
But $1 billion was just the start. The company's chief economist, Hal Varian, was allegedly brought in to figure out what this project was really worth in the long run.
His role was the valuator. And he wasn't looking at next quarter's earnings, no. He was projecting the ultimate total economic power that would come from owning this integrated technology decades down the line.
And this is the number the analysis claims he came up with. $243 trillion. That was his projected value for governing what he called the omni-singularity. It's a number that's so big it almost breaks your brain. It represents the ultimate prize in the race to control AI.
Which brings us right back to where we started. This forensic analysis lays out a story of incredible ambition, secrecy, and reward. But it leaves you with one big, nagging question. When the internal magic is worth trillions of dollars, who's really paying the price for the trick?